For weeks, the world watched Iran with a sense of nervous anticipation. Protests erupted across the country, social media lit up with images of defiance, and speculation exploded over what might come next. Many assumed that the United States would eventually step in. After all, Washington has intervened in moments like this before. The rhetoric was sharp, the pressure was visible, and expectations were quietly set. And then, nothing happened. No strikes, no intervention, no dramatic turning point. That absence, more than any action, tells us something critical. Not just about Iran, but about the limits of American power, the future of global security, and why Europe may be facing a far more uncertain future than it wants to admit. To understand why the United States chose not to intervene, we first need to be clear about where things actually stand inside Iran. The protest movement, which once appeared to be gaining momentum, has visibly lost steam. Reports of large-scale demonstrations have declined, and while pockets of resistance may still exist, especially among Kurdish groups, the nationwide surge appears to have passed for now. That does not mean Iran's problems are solved. Far from it. Inflation remains punishing, water shortages are worsening, and electricity production is insufficient for the country's needs. If anything, the unrest has made those structural problems worse. But political reality does not operate on inevitability. History shows that authoritarian systems can survive for years, even decades, while their populations remain deeply unhappy. The missing ingredient is not anger, it is coordination. Mass protest requires timing, trust, and courage aligning at once. That alignment is rare, fragile, and never guaranteed to return. Complicating matters further is the information blackout. Iran shut off large portions of its internet infrastructure early in the unrest, limiting both internal coordination and outside visibility. That makes it harder to know what is happening on the ground, but it also tells us something important. Governments confident they have restored order usually want to reconnect their economies. Prolonged blackouts suggest continued fear of unrest, not confidence. Still, the international consensus is that the peak moment has passed, at least for now, and that reality matters when evaluating American decision-making. Critics were quick to label Washington's restraint as weakness. Some framed it as another example of empty threats, arguing that once again, bold rhetoric was followed by hesitation. The accusation is familiar. Threats were issued, expectations were raised, and then action failed to materialize. But that framing oversimplifies what actually determines whether intervention is feasible. Military power is not magic. It is not a button that can be pressed at will to reshape complex domestic uprisings across a country the size of Iran. Protests were dispersed across numerous cities, involving small, mobile groups rather than centralized targets. Effective intervention would have required sustained, repeated strikes or operations, none of which were immediately available without significant escalation and risk. At the time, the United States simply did not have the necessary assets in position. The naval presence that might have enabled rapid, decisive action was not in the region. What remained were limited options, symbolic at best, dangerous at worst. A single destroyer can project force, but it cannot reshape an internal political crisis on its own. Military planners understand this reality, even if political commentators often ignore it. Power without positioning is potential, not capability. There is also a tendency to overlearn from isolated successes. Past operations have created the illusion that the United States can remove adversarial leaders quickly if it chooses to do so. That belief ignores the years of intelligence, preparation, and favorable conditions that make such operations possible. Iran is not a soft target. Its leadership is deeply insulated, geographically dispersed, and protected by layers of security designed precisely to prevent rapid decapitation. If removing Iran's leadership were easy, it would have happened long ago. Temporary unrest does not change that reality. Regional allies understood this. Even states deeply hostile to Iran argued against half measures. They recognized that provoking Tehran without delivering a decisive outcome could create chaos far worse than restraint. Missile retaliation, regional escalation, and unpredictable domino effects were all real possibilities. Israel, in particular, had reason to worry. Its defensive systems increasingly rely on American support, and that support was not positioned to respond immediately to a large-scale Iranian response. In this context, restraint was not hesitation, it was risk management. That does not mean the United States bears no responsibility.
One of the strongest criticisms is not about what Washington did in the moment, but about the strategic choices that led to limited options. Historically, the United States has maintained a carrier presence near the Persian Gulf, precisely because instability there is always possible. This time, that presence had been redeployed elsewhere. That decision was not accidental. It reflected prioritization. A major U.S. carrier group had been moved to the Caribbean to manage operations related to Venezuela. That redeployment delivered immediate leverage and tangible influence. Venezuela is geographically close, politically fragile, and strategically easier to pressure. The trade-off, however, was reduced flexibility in the Middle East. When unrest erupted in Iran, the option to act decisively simply wasn't there. Judging that choice requires honesty. On one hand, Iran had not experienced unrest of this scale in decades. For years, American forces sat nearby without incident, effectively wasting readiness on a contingency that never came. On the other hand, Iran's strategic value far exceeds Venezuela's. In the broader contest involving China, energy security, and global shipping lanes, Iran is not a side issue, it is a central piece. Venezuela is leverage, Iran is leverage plus consequence. This distinction matters because long-term competition with China increasingly revolves around energy access. In a major global conflict, limiting Beijing's access to oil would be a core objective. Venezuela, while important, is relatively easy to contain. Iran is not. Securing both the Persian Gulf and the Indo-Pacific simultaneously would require enormous naval commitments, stretching American capacity across vast distances. The fact that Washington had to choose should worry allies everywhere. And that brings us to Europe. The lesson here is not about any one president or personality, it is about structure. Even with the Indo-Pacific as the top priority, the United States was forced to pull assets away from Asia to respond elsewhere. That alone signals a hard truth. America does not have enough military capacity to dominate every theater at once. The era of unquestioned unipolar power is over. Europe has begun to internalize this reality. Defense spending commitments have increased. Strategic language has shifted. China is now described as the pacing threat, not just Russia. This reflects a growing understanding that future conflicts will be global, simultaneous, and resource-intensive. In such an environment, Europe cannot assume that American reinforcements will always arrive on time, in full, or at all. Some policymakers still hope that a change in leadership will restore old patterns, but that hope misunderstands how deeply institutional these priorities have become. Concerns about the Arctic, Asia, and global logistics do not come from one administration. They come from the Pentagon, from long-term planning, and from hard math about ships, aircraft, and industrial capacity. Those realities will confront any future president, regardless of party. That means Europe faces a simpler, if uncomfortable, choice. It must invest as though it will be expected to carry far more of its own defense burden, regardless of who occupies the White House. This does not mean abandoning the alliance. It means recognizing that alliances function best when all members are capable, credible, and prepared. For American viewers, this moment should prompt reflection as well. The decision not to intervene in Iran was not a failure of will, it was a demonstration of limits. Limits imposed by geography, logistics, competing priorities, and finite resources. Those limits do not disappear with stronger language or tougher posturing. They require strategy, investment, and difficult trade-offs. If you're finding this analysis useful, this is a good moment to pause and engage. Liking the video helps it reach more people who care about serious global issues. Subscribing ensures you don't miss future breakdowns of events that shape American security, and sharing it helps elevate discussions that go beyond surface-level headlines. The uncomfortable truth is that global stability is becoming harder to maintain, not easier. Power is diffusing, crises are overlapping, and no single country, even one as powerful as the United States, can be everywhere at once. That reality does not mean decline, but it does mean adjustment. For Europe, for America, and for the world, the era of effortless dominance has passed. What comes next will depend on whether allies adapt to that truth, or continue to pretend it isn't real.